It's another Hunt for Automotive Survivors. I'm gonna drive around and show you rust-free old cars that are still in use in the city of Los Angeles. This is my second Survivor Hunt video. What I'm gonna do is drive around the streets in LA and look for rust-free old cars that are either stashed in driveways or still in use. It's amazing, actually, how many cars dating even back to the 50s are still just in regular daily driving function out here in LA. I think your mind is gonna be blown. Last time I gave you about half an hour worth. I think I'm gonna dig up even more this time. And you know what? If you really like this kind of video, and people last time really did, do me a favor and share it, and share the channel. Because last time I dropped on the 4th of July weekend, the views were not incredibly awesome, but the response was so positive, I thought it was definitely worth another try. Let's go. That Ford back there was a 73 4 or 5 based on the grille, but we know it's a 74 or 75 because it is a super cab or extended cab, and they only did that in 1974 and 1975. This thing was an F350 long bed, and I looked in to discover that it was an automatic and looked like original paint. It's pretty cool. The extended cab truck story is, I don't know, vaguely interesting. Dodge invented it with the very first club cab that came out in the 1973 model year. And then there was Ford in 1974. Chevy never did it on the square body trucks. And the Datsun 620 or bullet side had a king cab starting in 1977. This appears to be a 1970 AMC Hornet, and I'm gonna say that because I think it might be factory Big Bad Green. No, it's not. I see peeling clear coat. That is a dead giveaway on old cars that the paint's not original, as if they have clear coat. Anyway, that was a AMC Hornet Coupe, either a 70 or 71. The vehicle I'm driving here is my 1990 Chevy V1500, which is a suburban half-ton 4x4. I've got the 5.7 in it, 700 R4, 241 transfer case, and 10-bolt axles with 373s in them. It's a bone stocker, it's painfully slow. It's got 206,000 miles on it, but it's actually really good, and the interior is super clean. That was a Jeep Comanche, or MJ, like Mary Jane. It had a pretty unusual bed cap on it as well. Those things were made from 86 to 92, and they're based on the Jeep Cherokee XJ. But they're cut off at the back of the cab. They have like a welded on frame section for the bed. They're pretty cool. They had both long bed and short bed versions. This up here is a 1972 Dodge Dart, and I know that because it's got the bumper like a 71. 1970 Dart has 2 taillights. 1971 has 4. 1972 has 4, but the side marker lights changed. They're no longer an integral one in flush with the body with a chrome trim. They're sort of a piece of plastic stuck on the outside. And if you look at the nose, this is the last year of the sort of elegant nose. 70 and 71 and 72. In 73, they went to the one that is sort of pointy in the middle. So that's a 72 Dodge Dart, and probably more than you ever needed to know about model years of 70 to 72 Darts. That is a 1973 or 4 Plymouth Gold Duster. The Gold Duster was a trim level on a regular Plymouth Duster. And I know it's a 73 or 4 because it's got the different looking taillights, and the more formal grille in the front with sort of that center section that pooks out a little bit. The 70 through 72 is a little cleaner. I don't know exactly what you got with the Gold Duster trim. I think it was more of an upscale thing. I've never really aspired to own one. I may have owned one now that I think about it, and I just didn't care. I think that's possible. It's probable. Oh, it's Survivor. That's a pretty clean little Civic. I covered those in my first Survivor hunt video, so roll back and look at that. And we've got a 55 or 56 Ford, I'm not sure which. You know, I'm totally accustomed to seeing 70s cars, even 60s cars, but 50s cars on the street are still pretty unusual, which reminds me of something. In my last Survivor hunt video, I found a 30s car and I identified it as a 38 Buick, which the guy who was standing next to it agreed with me. And the audience actually caught up with me and said that the grill's a little bit different, and it was in fact a 37 Buick. So there was a little correction for you. By the way, I don't even comment on GMT 400 trucks. They're everywhere. Total just standard. Oh wow. I turned down this little dead-end street, and what do I see? A 66 Chevelle 4-door Strippo model. And this thing is beat. But it's got its original California black and yellow license plates, and it has a current registration sticker. So that thing is still in action. Cool. And right down the street from the Chevelle, a 63 Ford Falcon Futura. It's been sitting in that driveway for a while. I stopped and looked, and the last sticker on it was 2013. So that's gonna make someone a good driveway find someday. The legendary 73 to 78 GMC motorhome, all fiberglass, front wheel drive, Oldsmobile unitized power package with 455 power up until I think 77. They stopped making 455s and they ran out of them, so they turned into Oldsmobile 403s. Those things are cool. They've got twin rear axles that are just dragged behind the front axle. The cool thing about them is that they have a flat floor. They were the only complete RV assembled by an OE car manufacturer. And the reason I'm so into them is because of Hot Wheels. When I was a little kid, I had a green Hot Wheels of one of those things, and I just thought it was neat, so I've always sort of known about them. Never had one, never will. That one looks like it's parked for the long term. I was just looking at that 55 Pontiac 2-door station wagon for sale. He didn't say how much it is, which means it's probably way too much. It's weird. He painted it a two-tone with that dip that looked very much like a 56 Ford. Kind of weird. Looking at the photo or the video of that 55 wagon, you can see that the nose of the Pontiac is way longer than it is on the Tri-5 Chevy. The roofline is the same, but they're actually on a different frame, and they've got the master cylinder below the floor. There's a lot of differences between the Chevy and the Pontiac. Right now we're driving past a coin-op car wash where I used to wash my Super Bee when I was a kid. Actually, we'd go down there and degrease engines and stuff in the car wash. It was kind of jerky. Shouldn't have done it, but we did. Sometimes I think that every Volkswagen thing was sold in California. You see kind of a lot of them just around. It's a Type 181. They were based on the World War II Kubelwagen, and they're actually really neat. They're built on a Karmann Ghia pan. They all have 1600s in them. They're 4 speeds. And they were only sold in the United States for 73 and 74 model years, because after that there was some sort of safety reg that came along that threw them out. But they're available in other countries for a long time. But you still do see things cruising around, and they are, I think, pretty neat. Now I'm transitioning from the part of town called Silver Lake to the part of town called Atwater Village. And I'm on the famed Hyperion Bridge. You've seen this thing in some old film noir, and it was in Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I think it was built in the 20s. I'd have to look that up. You know what? I'll put the year on the screen once I find out what year it was built. But the point is, some people came through there and stole all of the vintage street lights off of the bridge, I don't know, 2-3 years ago in the middle of the night. Took them all. Just unreal. Now we're gonna hunt cars in Atwater. Back there I'd showed you that really kind of rusty looking clapped out Ford that I assumed was a 55. Well, this blue one is definitely a 55, and you know that because if you look in the grill at the corners, it's got 2 Dagmars. You know what a Dagmar is? Well, if you look up an actress from a long time ago whose name was Dagmar, you'll see that she had a couple of very large Dagmars. And that's why, that's what those bullets are called on old 50s cars. Wow, this neighborhood is tight. You gotta constantly be getting out of the way for electric cars. Remember I showed you earlier in the episode the green 4-door 72 Dart, and I pointed out that you could tell that it was a 72 because it didn't have the pointy grill? Well, here's a Dart with the pointy grill. I just passed a Dodge SRT-10 pickup truck. Those are the full-size trucks that were loaded with Dodge Viper V10s in them. There's a common misconception that the V10 that was in regular 3/4 ton trucks is the same engine family as the Viper V10, and really they share nothing except for the cylinder configuration and displacement of 488 cubic inches. They're very, very different engines. But anyway, Chrysler did decide to put the Viper V10 into those full-size Dodge trucks in 2004, 5, and 6. And I was at Hot Rod when they came out, and we had done an illustration. I remember I had a guy, Chris Hickman, do this illustration of what we thought would be a good idea for a Viper truck. And we always thought that they had taken that and actually built the truck. But I recently met the guy who was in charge of that program, and he said, of course, that that was not the case. But man, our drawing was a lot like the 2004 regular cab, short bed, manual transmission Viper V10 truck. I think the crew cabs are only available in the last 2 years, 2005 and 6. That was a 68 or 69 Ford Falcon. I would say the least desirable of all Falcons would have landed from 66 to 69. And you know that's a 68 or 9 because it had the more square looking taillights on it. And in 1970, unusually, they took the Falcon name and they moved it from the compact car or the small car all the way up to the mid-size car. It became like a Torino. Kind of a strange choice that they would take that name and move it around like that, but there you go. Buick Wildcat 68. Oh, that guy kind of whiffed on the 68. He didn't get the earlier one that had the nail head in it. He got the Wildcat with the 430. If he'd waited till 1970, he could have had a 455 in that thing. 455 is the best Buick in my opinion. The 1970 model in particular, when it had, I think, 10 1/4 to 1 compression and made more than 500 pound-feet of torque. I love the 455 because you can bolt them right into Jeeps that came with a Buick 350. The Wildcat was sort of the high-performance version of the full-size Buick. I think it had a shorter wheelbase than like the Electra 225, and it had the powerful motor in it. Oh, you know how else that guy whiffed? He got the 4-door when you could have gotten the Wildcat 2-door. I basically just called that guy out for being a chump when he ordered that brand new. I have wanted a giant American convertible for a while now, and that is a 66 Chrysler Newport. The disappointment for me there is that all of a sudden I've come to really dig the 66 Chrysler 300, which has a completely different grille nose setup. The Newport was more of a basic car and it's got sort of more that flat grille, but still really cool. And I'm happy to see it just parked on the street, meaning that person's probably using that convertible as it should be used. I should say the neighborhood that I'm prowling here is Echo Park and the Echo Park side of Silver Lake. And the place was built in the early to mid 20s. And you can see a lot of garages on the street that are really small. And I always hope to find some barn findy kind of cool old car in there. But like this one, they're often loaded with Porsches, or there's not room for a car at all, because they were all built for Model Ts and Model As, which are far smaller than a modern car. So you see a lot of people, like I passed a woman earlier who was using her garage as a paint studio. But I think that's a signature of the area, is these little tiny garages. Okay, this is a little weird. That was an Action Line pickup, looked like a 69 or 70, and it was a C10 short bed, but it had a lift gate on the back and looked like it had for a really long time. So that was kind of cool. But let me use that as a trigger to show you a reel of some of the other Action Line trucks that I've seen out here today. Those two are beat up pretty bad, which kind of tells you that they're still in use. I take that to be a 68 Nova 4-door and a 69 or 70 C10, but it is a short bed step side. It has the notch in the step side for the spare tire that mounts on the side. I've never really dug those. What's your take? Now I'm down in traffic again, and I'm at the intersection of Fletcher and Riverside Drive. There's a couple things about this. First of all, Riverside Drive used to be a great place to go wide open throttle and test out your muscle car all the time. You can't really do that anymore because of the traffic. Second thing is, this intersection is cool because it used to have a wooden trestle that went over it for the Red Line car, which was the public transportation that was in Los Angeles way back in the day. I think that they did the very last Red Line car, removed it from service in like 1964. That's off the top of my head. I am once again going to put on the screen the actual date that they ended that. Actually, I'm going to give you the start and end dates. But the cool thing about the intersection is you can still see the concrete pylons that anchored the bridge that went across. People have sort of painted them, graffitied them, turned them into cool art. Some of them, it looks like, are still just derelict looking, but I just think that's neat LA history. That building there was the old Vandy Camp's Bakery. It was built in 1930, and I remember as a kid, it was still being used as a bakery, and you could smell the stuff that they were making for literal miles around. It was pretty wild. There was also a little Vandy Camp store there that had the big windmill on the top, like the restaurants did, if you've ever seen those old Vandy Camp's restaurants. Very cool place. I think it's now like office stuff or a school or something. It's been regentrified. They've saved the building, but the business is long gone. I decided to go on foot just a little bit, and I found a 64 Chevy pickup. I've always been a little bit rough on the 64, 5, 6 pickup trucks, but what I've determined is that the 64 has the badge down low with a large bow tie, and then the 65 has the badge up on the cowl. Then the 66 has the badge back down on the fender, but it has a small bow tie in sort of a perfect square or rectangle. So I think that is a 64. Ooh, the obligatory 70s van. It's surprising how many of these are still on the streets. This thing has seen better days, but dude, check the wing on the back, the hams sign, the Hottie Holler tire cover. Yeah, it's got it all. Okay, it was a 4-door, which I don't really love. I prefer the 2-door, but I'm actually a fan of the Disco Nova, which would be 1975 to 1979. And here's the cool thing about them. I know that they're smog era. I know they've got the big bumpers and everything, but the front clip on them is like a 2nd-gen Camaro or Firebird, and the back of them is like a 1st-gen Camaro and Firebird. So they're like a mix of those two platforms, and I think they actually make pretty good hot rods. And of course, there's also the Buick and Pontiac clones of the Nova, or, you know, variations. Here's something I've sort of been getting into lately, even though I know virtually nothing about them, is little Toyota pickup trucks. I think what I've established in my own mind, that they were cool pre-Tacoma. I know there's many of you who are gonna say that Tacomas are really good too. I don't know if I shot any Tacomas or not, because that's how little I actually know about them, but here's a bunch of Toyota little pickup trucks that I've seen. I'm back in Eagle Rock, California with a little restaurant or diner review. I went to Armand's right here since 1962. It's pretty good. You can tell it's old. It's had a little bit of a remodel, and I would say the burgers are okay. So not a full-on Freiburger recommendation, but not bad. Let's go hunt more cars. I've seen a couple of early Broncos here. One of them has got just the conventional wagon type top on it, but I also spotted a half cab. I think it's really cool that they offered these pickup truck versions of Broncos. And of course, in '66, they also had the Roadster, which is the one with a fiberglass insert that removed the door, so there was just no door on it. Cool early years of the Bronco. Still amazing how many of those you see around LA, but most of them are in use by hipsters. The Falcon wagon was pretty cool. It was a 64, which I know because the real quick and easy way to tell the difference between a 64 and a 65 Ford Falcon is that the 65 has a vertical bar in the middle of the grille and the 64 does not. And of course, that one was the Squire, which means it's got the wood grain on the side. And I assume it's probably the same person who owns the 66 Ford truck here. And I know it's a 66 because it's got the grille with the two pointy things that come together in the middle like that. And 66 is also the first year of the twin I-beam suspension, at least on the F100 models. That twin I-beam, I think, was a little goofy at first, but it really proved its merits on the Rangers later on for pre-runner applications. And if you like, you can have a pink IROC Z. Or you can pick the more conventional red IROC Z. The last time I did one of these sort of survivor hunts, I showed you a reel of all the Volkswagen Bugs that I saw, because there's a ton of them still on the street. So here's a few more that I saw on this trip, plus a couple of Volkswagen buses. Man, in the same block, I found two 1960 Chevys, a 4-door and an El Camino. You know, I used to love the 59 more. It's a lot more garish, but the 60, I think, is a lot sleeker. Wow, cool stuff. And around the corner, a cool Ford truck. So that guy chose the long and short of it. Short, he's got the little Isuzu-based Chevy Love truck. Long, he's got his GMC custom camper. You'd probably be more familiar with the Chevy Longhorn. It's the version of the 68 to 72 trucks, not 67, that had the extra 6 inches put in the front of the bed. You can actually see on the bed like a line where they added that piece of sheet metal, and they ran them at a longer wheelbase than the regular 3/4 tons. And I think that the Longhorn probably had leaf spring rear suspension. Don't hold me to that, or someone can correct me. But anyway, that guy's got a long GMC and a short Chevy. You know, when you look for old muscle cars for sale out here, I would say El Caminos are still pretty affordable, way more so than Chevelles. I don't know, guess people still just don't dig the spork of automobiles. At least not quite as much. Over here at this park is a gymnasium where they shot the tryout scene in Back to the Future, the one where Huey Lewis was in there and advised them that they were just too loud. Now, here's a car that's really outside my wheelhouse, and I don't know anything about them, but I've always thought that they looked kind of cool. It's the little Mercedes SL, like a 450 SL and the later models, and also the SLC Coupe. I don't love the Coupe, I do like the Roadster, but most of them around here have the hardtop on them, and I think a hardtop SL looks better than an SLC. And of course, it's cool when they have no top at all also. Anyway, here's a couple of them. I love this guy with the Mustang, man. We better hope an earthquake doesn't hit. I think I'm one of few people who actually likes a 67 or 8 better than the earlier cars. This one is a 67. I stopped back there to look at a 51 DeSoto. Such a stodgy car with such a cool grille, and I'll tell you why. Actually, it's interesting to me how if you look at 1949 to 1951 or 2 Buicks and DeSotos, I feel like they were following each other stylistically. And then in 1950, Buick came out with this model with the absurd teeth hanging all the way down to the ground. And then DeSoto came back in 1951 and had sort of a more reserved version of the same thing. And it was the 1951 DeSoto grille that became really popular to remove from the car and use in other applications like 49 Mercs to make custom cars. It was like back in the day in the 50s, they would hunt the junkyard for the cool pieces from each car, you know, grills, trim, taillights, and just put them on other years, makes, and models. Kind of weird. The Dodge van, but more importantly, the Oldsmobile Vista Cruiser. Of course, that's pop culture's favorite station wagon. It is the one that has the windows up on the side of the top and sort of the bulgy section. Let's see, Vista Cruiser was 1964 to 1972 that actually had the windows in it. They used the name much later, but they didn't have the windows, and so no one cares. But people always forget that there was also the Buick Sport Wagon that also came out in 1964 with the windows in the top, but they discontinued the Buick before they discontinued the Oldsmobile. The Buicks only went till 1969. However, much later, there was a Roadmaster that had sort of a version of the glass roof. Here's something I'd like you to comment and let me know. When I'm doing this, do you want to see more Chevy S10s? Do you want to see OBSs, you know, GMT 400s and all of their variants and everything? There's so many of them out here. I just have trouble considering them special. But if you think they're cool, I can shoot a lot of them. Meanwhile, let's have a look at all the square bodies that I've seen today. That is a Kaiser Jeep M715. 1967 to 1969. Those are basically full-size Jeep trucks. If you look at the grille and the hood and the doors, they're obviously stampings that are from the original design that came out in 1963 for the Wagoneers, designed by Brooks Stevens, among others. But they were legit Army vehicles. They were 1.25 ton. They had Dana 60s in them. They had the overhead cam inline 6. They're really slow and heavy, but a lot of people hop them up like that guy did with big meats, and probably later model Dana 60s that have the better 35 spline axles and things like that. Very cool full-size Jeep. I've had one. I wish I had it again. Oh, you know what? One of the coolest things about them is the big barrel-shaped openings for larger tires. Yeah, M715 is good. There's also an ambulance version, the M725. Okay, how completely random is this? Earlier I was telling you about the DeSoto, the 51 DeSoto. Lo and behold, a 51 Buick parked on the streets. Looks like this one is a special, which was the lowest trim level. And you can see those teeth in the front of it there that I was talking about, how they hang kind of all the way down underneath the bumper. Wow. That is wild. I was just talking about that and then saw one on the street. I promise you that was not a setup. It's just what happens around here. Cruise for cars long enough and you spot all kinds of stuff. And that's it. Do me a favor, if you dug this, share it. That would really help me a lot. I think I told you at the top of the show that this is sort of an experiment for me. I did one of these before and the reactions were amazing. Kind of like this was revolutionary, which was surprising to me, but the views were down a little bit. So I want to find out if I can kick it up, and if so, I'll probably end up doing this not every month, but every couple of months. It would really help me because, let's be honest, it's a light lift. I don't have to wrench on anything. I can just drive around, have no expense in it, and make a cool episode. I enjoy doing it. I like seeing what's out there. I like thinking through the history and the trivia and the tips and all of that stuff. So go ahead and share the show. Do me a favor, buy my merchandise. The link is always in my description, and I will see you next time on the David Freiburger channel.